Hey beautiful people, how you guys doing? Well, in the previous tutorial, as you know, we were working on blocking out the torso, and I hope you guys did well with that. I hope you were able to keep up with it. I tried to be as thorough as possible, which I hope it worked out pretty well. But nevertheless, well, let's move forward. In this tutorial, we'll be moving on to doing the detailing of the front of the torso, and just try and have fun with it. And do share what you've done. Let's get into it. The cool thing is, when you sculpt in this or block out in this kind of manner, is that once you're starting to do the detailing, you can choose how much detail you want to keep, how much you want to lose, how much you want to add. Because ironically, the amount of smoothing you do, if you do this in an even better way, is that when you start to smooth down, then you choose where to smooth down like a little bit less and parts to smooth down a little bit more. If you know what I mean. So it's a pretty cool, it's a good method and good process for working. Okay guys, so here we're just switching back a little bit to the clay strips brush. Just gonna add a little bit more of this pectoral muscle structure, and the whole idea behind this, as I said before, is that we'll be able to smooth it down later and still keep some detailing. These are different methods and processes to getting into it. You'll notice later on in the video that the whole process will kind of change because I know my work style. But there's a perfect way to work, and just something for you to remember and keep in mind while you are working with your brushes and your brushwork. Try and remember the idea of, if you hold down shift, it will turn your brush into a smooth brush, which is very useful to you. It'll save you a whole lot of time. It'll save your hardware as well. Remember that as well. But over and above that is that when you're holding shift to then smooth down like there, I'm just switching back to be able to get used to the idea of just holding shift to smooth down. It takes some time. Sometimes, you know, old habits die hard. If I hold down shift while I'm using the clay strips brush, for example, the smoothing strength will work based on the smooth brush setting. It won't work based on the setting I have for the clay strips. Just keep that in mind. So with the strength of 0.7, you just come in and like start to smooth down a little bit, you know, depending on the kind of detailing and strength that you want to portray with your character. Then you can choose the strength of the brush, so which will then obviously be you deciding how much of the muscle structure detailing are you choosing to keep. In which case, depending on how buff I want him to be, I just want to be able to see a little bit of that muscle structure, just so we can have an idea of, you know, this is meant to be a very high detail level kind of character. He's a fairly well built character. So let's continue with the detailing of this torso. And yeah, you wouldn't have too much of these muscles really standing out for that matter. What I could do, however, there are multiple methods to go about this. What we're gonna do is just take that clay strips brush and just add in a little bit of volume in those gaps that made up the in-between area of towards the front of the rib cage, the diaphragm, and we will add that and hold shift and then smooth it back down, and you know, still keeping a little bit of that muscle structure and muscle lining. And there we go, and we're good to go. Now here, let's add a bit more texturing, just to allow us to have a more realistic form and feel. There we go. That looks pretty good. Okay, then let's hold control. Let's have a slight reduction here. I feel like that rib line is a bit way too detailed. well, it's too large for one and not just detailed. So now we add in our muscle structure here for the back, going down into the obliques. Add a bit of volume. It's going to be a little bit buff, like we said. So one of the easiest ways to show that off is by essentially bulking it up. Okay, let's add a little bit of good form to it. Let's open our reference images as well. Like we said, it's always best to work with reference images. Always have reference. That's how you'll get the best work and the best results out, is to work with reference images. And there we go. So I actually need to cancel those a little bit. They're a bit much. Currently there's nothing wrong with our muscle flow here. We've done it perfectly. This is the general flow of muscle structure towards the back, so we can just smooth down and we'll be a-okay. 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 Alright. Just making this class a little bit more exciting, guys. Okay, there we go. Do not let it work against my professionalism. And I hope you're enjoying it, but this is generally how we'll go about it. Then we continue with the front. I think let's just work only on the front for today, for this tutorial, and then we'll just skip on over and do the back, the detailing for the back tomorrow. Shouldn't be too difficult to follow this, but you know, we want to leave a little bit of leeway just in case you know, you want to slow down a little bit and just take the end for end properly. Then we can do so. As for here, I think, let me just, so we hold Control N, by the way, just to dig into the sculpt. Once again, I will keep repeating these so you can kind of have it etched into you. It must become reflex to work like this. It is far preferable. Now that we've done that, hold and shift, smooth down a little bit there, keep a little bit of the errors that you will kind of create. Trust me, it'll make for a beautiful sculpt and a beautiful artwork. Press G for the grab brush. We're going to just pull up this upper part of the abdominal muscles and the tissue. If you notice, you get different types of body structures, like I'll keep repeating as well to you, and keep that in mind. But in general, the top abdominals aren't quite as big as the lower ones, which is something to always pay attention to. So we're just gonna lift these up a little bit so we can extend our lower part of the torso, as it is generally a little bit longer. And come into our side view here in the right viewport, as always, squiggly button just above the tab, and switch to the right view. I will bring the name of it in the next video. I will hold myself to that. I owe you that, as my supporters, and I will do so. I will find out, and if any of you know, please do share the comment, and feel free to laugh if you find it to be funny and humorous. Okay, there we go. That's about a nice angle and shape. As always, work with reference. I am working from reference as I sculpt right here and now. Do it more often than not. Make it a frequent thing that you do. It is the best way to work. Having a good solid foundation and understanding of anatomy is a good way to build and enhance your sculpting skills. Let's just enlarge this brush so we can create a more rounded dip. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but just so it can drag in a few more UVs and not create just like a super sharp line. Now the crease is a bit intense. Nobody's really got this kind of definition on their pectorals unless they're like Superman or something, but you are all superheroes in my book, just so you know. pretty solid people, pretty solid hooks. So there we're adding in a little bit of the detail. Now you get this nice crease just by the armpit, because the muscle tissue kind of has to follow that crease, and God has designed our anatomy to function that way, so it can kind of stretch and pull. So all the parts that have stretch and pull, you will notice that your muscles will generally form more creases in that area. Pay attention to it while you work. It's very important. These are the things that will kind of make your skills a bit better, if you know what I mean. Alright, grab brush. I just want to drag this inward a bit, because the stretching of this muscle is a bit more sharper than the norm. And we will come to this front view, or get the scrape brush, and just want to flatten this out. If you noticed, it looks a little bit too lumpy. Lumpy is not how God has designed us. My general abdomen is not, my general pectoral area is not as lumpy as this kind of seems right now. I just press period on the keyboard, just to, if you ever notice, you get to a point where you've kind of like zoomed in too much and your wheel isn't zooming well enough, and you want to keep working on that area. All you need to do is take any of your brushes, click once, and when you press period, it kind of brings that area into focus, and you've got more control again. And once again, if that does happen and you don't want to do it that way, you can use the middle wheel button, which actually kind of still keeps the limitation, but prior to it being too zoomed in, if you do that, then you click and press period again, and it super zooms. See, it went all the way to the other side. Anyway, something to bear in mind. I myself am learning still. We always are learning. As an artist, never think that you're not good enough to consider yourself to be an artist or a 3D sculptor and a creator. If you already are learning and are in that process, even if you're copying from tutorials, you're automatically qualified. Our industry is so expansive that we're always continually learning. There's always new methods to doing things. So never consider the fact that you don't know the all in all of platforms and how to create everything. That doesn't make you good enough. That's far from the truth. We're in one of the most difficult industries to work in and to come up in. So, give yourself kudos for whatever you can retain, and whatever you manage to be able to work. Just be grateful for it. Have gratitude for it. I think you're pretty badass to even take the risk to do it. So yeah, in that regard, well done to y'all. So let's get back into it. I'm gonna take the clay strips, and we're just gonna add a little bit more volume into this. Hold shift, smooth it down a little bit. Just want it to be a bit more rounded and not just flat. That would kind of not work. Let's just add in a few creases here. Now all of this is always relative to the human body and the structure and how much exercise a person does. So there's no set in stone rule for how to do this part. It's really just up to you and the kind of character you want to develop and look. And yeah, you can have fun, just play with it, which is generally what I'm doing now, and it's making the whole process a lot better. It's a lot more fun. I'm a lot less stressed. I'm not worried too much about whether it looks fantastic or not. I just want to have a fantastic time doing it. That in itself is a lot of power to have. So work with a good attitude. Come and bring a good attitude, and there we're holding in shift to smooth down. Bring back a little bit of the crease brush, just one line there, and then press P, the pinch brush, and let's add in some definition into here. Now what we do want to do is kind of give them a slight bit of a deformation. So I'm going to change my reference image. I'm working with different body types to create this, just so I can have the most unique structure and form that I could possibly get out of it, which is pretty cool. Always borrow from Grace's. And then I'm going to drag it down a bit, pull these up, and automatically, presto, looks a lot better. It is fantastic. Alright, let's grab the clay strips again and add a little bit more volume in here. And the reason why I'm generally adding it all in a vertical manner is because if you study your anatomy, the muscle tissue fibers underneath this area are formed in exactly that manner. And I don't know if you noticed this, but when it's overly smoothed down compared to when it's got its little kinks in its armor, you know, those beautiful little mishaps that are in the human body, it looks better. That looks a lot better than this, because it's just it's impractical for us to be all freaking supermodel, you know, weird form kind of thing. So I think it's quite nice when you leave margin for error. What makes a surface look more realistic, even when you're doing your materials and texturing, is adding in rust to your metals, you know. So same thing applies when you're sculpting the human body. Add some rust to it and you'll see how beautiful it can look. I heard this quote from someone a long time ago, and I've kept it throughout my life. It's to realize that there is no single standard for what's acceptable and what's perfect and what's not. Alright, okay, let's get back to focus. This is hope you're appreciating my little 2-cent comments there. Okay, and there we have, let's increase his dip a little bit, because he is making a super ripped character here. And there he goes, brilliant. G brush, G on the keyboard. Some of these brushes are far easier to get to in terms of the shortcut keys. Some of them you gotta press so you gotta press shift and space and then press the key that matches. Like, I find that to be a very tedious way to work. So we just, yeah, let's work with this as it is. And plus the brushes aren't too far off. In fact, let me switch to this mode. Control space will kind of zoom in. It magnifies whatever workspace you're in. So it'll make life a lot easier. And there we go. And let's switch our reference image again. And I kind of like how this dude's muscle structure and form looks here. So what I will do is imitate it and emulate it as best as I can. So shift and use the grab brush. It's got a little bit of a weird kink to it at this part, kind of following a similar thing to like that segment in there, which is pretty cool. So we'll work with that. And one thing I did notice though about his body, and especially when we're getting to the navel part, my usual misconception was always have the navel like dead center here, and it actually does not work that way. You'd be surprised, although like we say, with different body types it can differ. With some people it will lay in round about there. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of volume there. As you can see, it'll make for a good navel area. Bring back the clay strips and let's bring in some volume here to the bottom. There we go. And just fill out this a bit more, which will make it look a little bit better, as I hope. Okay, and then the deltoids, I think let's kind of restructure these and rebuild them. The general flow of muscle tissue goes this way. It remains sideways and kind of horizontal up until it joins in to the back muscles. So that's how we will give them form here. Sorry, not deltoids, the obliques, the external obliques. And then from here they flow upward into your back muscles. So something to keep in mind while you sculpt. There we go, we're getting some nice volume. And there we go, sculpt back downwards. Brilliant. Now remember, the reason why we keep these strokes and want to kind of add the volume in clay strips, as always, is to try and keep that beautiful muscle structure going and flowing into it. It's very important to do it that way. And even when it comes to these oblique muscles, it will also depend on the exercise of the person and their body structure and how they've been designed, how that temple functions. So now I want to give these a lift because of the reference image I have. The staunch Okies muscles generally have this kind of flow to them. His obliques sit quite high and well built. And let's just bring these back in and squeeze in that bottom end of them. And what we can do now is enlarge the I think it's called, I've got a reference here, latissimus dorsi. The latissimus dorsi, which is generally this muscle that flows from the side downwards. So we want to kind of have this beautiful flow from them into the external oblique. I think the external oblique refers to the muscle structure on the entire side of the body, because I don't have any reference that states otherwise, which is, I guess, simpler for us. Yeah, so I'm just giving all these little nuggets of information so we can kind of learn from. And now we're gonna build in the muscle tissue around the rib and have the rib line, add a little bit of definition to it. Let's just switch our reference image once again. It's very good to always go back and forth. I prefer that method of working as well. What it does is it allows for you to not really get bored with any part, even though, like I always say to you, I don't get bored doing this. This is fun work. It's what we're born to do. If you love your work and you have a good attitude, man, you will love doing it all the time. You'll never get bored of working, because work becomes play, and that's the whole point, is that your life must become play. It must become just a garden of just you having fun. Your chances of success, I believe, for me, go up tons more when you enjoy what you do and love it to the extreme. Now here I'm just adding back a little bit of this volume, the muscle structures. Now each one flows right back into the abdominal muscles, by the way, as I've pointed out before. I just want to enlarge it a little bit and scale the brush up. Hold shift, smooth them down. Now in general they won't stand out too much, so I don't want it to stand out all hectically, because he's not a super built person. There's fat tissue that goes over all of these, but this is just to help. So then when we get to a rendering point and we've got our ambient occlusions done and we're creating normals, like, you'll just have the most detailed and intricate kind of design to your character, which is pretty cool. And there we go, sorted. Now we'll just bring in the clay strips again. Now I just want to slightly work over these parts where the muscle structure stands out too much, which then gives us a little bit more of a muscle tissue stretching feel, if you know what I mean. So now you can see that the superficial muscles that are covering that rib line, but the underlying factor of it is that there's a volume that's been built because of the general structure of muscle tissue, and all of that just works to our favor, so why not? Alright, and now the flow of view is that this not meant to stand out all that much either. And remember, like I said, this we pretty much learn just to make sure we understand the muscle structure and how it will deform, and we're not going to lose anything in terms of the underlying volume and where it needs to lie. And there we go, got good muscle tissues there, muscle structure. And I think with this, I don't want these lower abdominals to be so large, so just bring that back in a little bit, hold shift, smooth these down, and there we have it. And take our draw brush, we'll use it, hold control down, and kind of create this dip for us here where the navel will come in. Enlarge that there. There we go, it looks good. Now, like I said before, not having it center aligned, we're going to shift it slightly upward and bring these abdominals back down, and we'll have a little bit more of a believable sculpt. Alright, now let's take the crease brush, working with my reference image now, just as always, and adding in a little bit of extra detailing there for our character. Zoom in a little bit and better definition line. An important thing with all your tools, the zoom level and the sizing will be important. As you noticed here, the further out, and I'm trying to crease it, doesn't really work all that well. If I need to add more definition, zoom in and actually add that definition into your sculpt, and it will respond very well to it. There we go. And I want to leave a few loose streaks there, not make it super perfect, and well, generally that's our sculpt. That's his front torso done. A little bit of bonus detailing. Let me as well add in a little bit more of a stronger dent there, and that's about right. We don't want to add too much definition on him, because then it'll become super unbelievable. Like, this is kind of just like bodybuilder extreme fit, but not super bulky. There we go. And in general, that is our torso. There's a lot more to add in here and get it to look uber realistic, but the whole point behind this is that for now, until we're joining in the head, we can't add in all the detail that we want to. We need to kind of hold out a little bit until we get to bullioning the neck, the cervical, which is generally anything that's connected to your spine from deltoid, shoulder height, all the way to your jawline. And there we go. That is beautiful, beautiful. Okay, let's add in one last piece of detailing, the most useless thing on a male body, and I hope somebody somewhere out there will kind of figure it out as to why we've got nipples. I think the general answer is that when, as people, human beings, I think a lot of people know this in general, it should be general knowledge by now, but is that when you're all babies in the tummy, you all start off as women first, as females, and then the defining factors of you being male come afterwards. So the reason why you have nipples is because you were a woman to begin with, and then your body decided like, nope, I think we're gonna go in the male route. I don't think it actually said no, but it would have been something of the sort. True story. I'm kidding. Alright, and let's get the grab brush, bring this a little further out, get that navel in. What we want to do here is try and dent those UVs there back, and then create this nice lip, and just shift just so it's not such a solid corner. As you can see, our sculpt is looking fan-freaking-tastic. There we go. Now I want to actually just get his external obliques to stand out a bit more. I like that look on a sculpt, and you gotta admit that does look a little bit better. And then once we add in more volume towards this bottom end and to where the legs will actually be connected, the lower limbs, the distal limbs, as you could call them, the inferior of the body. So the torso in general and everything that comes up here is part of what's called the superior body. So it's superior because it's above. Anyway, that's about it, and I will see you guys in the next tutorial, where we will be smoothing out the back of the sculpt. Cheers.